Hello, everyone. Welcome to Josoor online session on the future of education. My name is Michele Petochi. I work at Josoor in business development, and I would like to welcome our colleagues from Supreme Committee and Q22, delegates and other friends of the Josoor family. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I would also like to extend a warm welcome to all the kids who are working from home with their parents. So thank you so much for joining. I would just allow for people to join the live session. So a few seconds. And then I will give a brief introduction and some housekeeping. Great. So welcome everyone. The session on future of education has two goals. One goal is to gain insight into the education sector in general and how different organizations are managing to stay the course and what the key implications are. So this is a more general goal. More specifically, together with our panelists that I'm going to introduce in a few moments, we would really like to understand, what is that is concretely involved. What does it take concretely to migrate a full operation from offline to online? And what is new as one pursues that? What is not new? I mean, online education is certainly not new, but the current circumstances are certainly unprecedented and new. That we can probably all agree. I was talking about the kids at home. So data from UNESCO suggests that over 90% of the world's student population is currently affected by the crisis. Students from primary up to tertiary and so on. What that means in terms of numbers, on planet Earth at the moment, there is 1.5 billion with B, people who are being affected in a way or another by the current situation. And presumably the most affected are the most disadvantaged groups, regions, and cities. And actually, not only in developing countries, as we are seeing in Europe, that's a challenge for every country, everywhere. If we look at the specific sector, for example, we look at business schools, it's a moment of turmoil, because while most of the major business schools were already in a way equipped for online education, at the same time, they are facing challenges related to delays in application processes, changes in requirements, demands for reimbursement, and so on. So it's a very high pressure moment for entire sectors of the education landscape. Now, on a somehow positive side, because we would like to keep a degree of optimism, or at least we want to look at the future in a way that is constructive. One aspect that we should never forget is that education is a counter-cyclical industry, meaning in time of economic downturn, more people go into education. So in a way, there is an opportunity for the education sector at the moment. And also interestingly, we were looking at data, for example, from an education technology consulting called Holon IQ that surveys senior executives from different walks of life in the education industry. And what came out of the survey, interestingly, is that while on one hand, on the short term, literally every player in the industry is going to be hit heavily. So it seems that there is a negative impact on the short term across the board. On the medium and long term, what seems to emerge is a strong opportunity for those that will be able to utilize, to embrace education technology in a strategic way. And also, interestingly, apparently the opportunity would be relatively higher for specific regions of the world on the long term, and one of these regions is actually the MENA region. So I just wanted to share a few opening remarks with you to set the tone of the conversation. A couple of housekeeping information. You can post questions in the live event Q&A on the upper right part of the screen. And then, which is a feature we are testing literally in real time, on the menu on the bottom right of the screen, there is actually live caption in Arabic that you can activate. So it is not exactly a simultaneous interpretation, but it is an artificially intelligence provided transcription in real time. So that's something that we find is very cool, and we want to check how it works. So let me now introduce our distinguished speakers. Thank you so much to you all for being here today. I would like to welcome Diana El-Azar, Senior Director, Strategic Communication and Market Development at Minerva Project, an interesting project in liberal arts college that blends naturally offline and online experience. I will let Diana tell us more during the course of the session. I'm also glad to introduce Dr. Cyndy Hebsgaard, Senior Leader in Executive Education and also our beloved Education Director at Josoor. Thank you, Cyndy, for being with us today. And then, last but not least, Dr. Dino Ruta, Professor of Practice of Leadership and Sport Management at SDA Bocconi School of Management, partner of Josoor. Thank you so much, Dino, for being with us today. We are also mindful of the situation, which remains still very challenging in that region, in your region. I would like to start with one general question, then I will ask a more specific question, and then we will welcome questions from the audience. So based on what you are seeing at the moment, where is all this going? Where is, in what direction is the education sector, from your perspective, evolving? Do you see an evolution in the business model? Do you see radical changes for the end users, so teachers, students? And what are maybe examples of key organizational aspects related to even financial aspects, large operational aspects that should be taken into account and that our audience should would find interesting to learn more about. May I ask Cyndy to start? You should unmute. Please unmute your speaker.
Thank you very much, Michele. It's wonderful to be here with everybody today, and I think there are several trends that we're seeing in higher education that predate the coronavirus. And one of the big ones that has impacted many people is the increase in tuition fees for students and the lessening involvement in terms of funding from federal and state, provincial level governments. And it's put a lot of pressure on the sector and individual universities and colleges to generate their own revenue. And as a result of that, many of them had developed or are beginning to develop more robust online offerings for people. Now, the other thing that's happening in the sector is increased collaboration, interinstitutional collaboration, that is multiple institutions and organizations internationally coming together to leverage specialized training, like Josoor Institute has done. Also, another major trend has been to create pathways and programs facilitating facilitating people laddering programs. So let's say you get a bachelor's degree, then you can come on and do a diploma level credential that may or may not be relevant to a master's degree, but it's a way to capture, let people participate in higher education where they would like to participate. So there's a lot of those kinds of arrangements happening. The other trend we're seeing is competency-based education that recognizes prior work experience for people, that gives them prior learning assessment credits, so that they still must take exams and demonstrate their competency, but we're rewarding mid-career and professional people for the work experience they've had and translating that into a weighted academic credential. And then probably for our discussion here today, the most tangible one would be the development of online and the various technologies used to create really high engagement. And there's been a lot of research that shows that when there is an online component involved in education, whether it's a blended model or a hybrid, there's higher student retention. And schools are very mindful of their ability not only to attract students, but to retain them, because they want to show graduation pictures and figures. That's very important. The last thing I'm going to say about trends is the international trends of students' mobility. Students have been becoming increasingly more mobile around the world, and I think in 2015 there were approximately 4.5 million international students traveling abroad to study, and they anticipate by the year 2030 there'll be 7 million international students. Now, that was before we had the coronavirus hit. And as a result of the coronavirus, a very recent study has been conducted that shows that of these people that anticipated traveling abroad to study, 45% of them are now considering starting or doing their whole program online because of the coronavirus situation. And this is particularly important when you look at the places where international students come from. They're typically coming from India, China, and the Middle East, in these areas. And they travel to English-speaking universities in Europe, America, and the UK. And so this will have a significant impact on those receiving institutions that are going to have to quickly adapt their style, because they want international students because of the differential in revenue tuition. It helps support other programs on campus. So those are some of the trends that we're seeing that are going to be particularly, and they'll all be impacted by the coronavirus. You're muted, Michele.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much, Cyndy. Let me hand it over to Dino. Dino, thank you for being with us today. It's I think your perspective would be very interesting because you belong to a highly established leading social science school with a global reputation and footprint, and at the same time you are involved in some of the most innovative projects at Bocconi. So it would be great to get your perspective.
First of all, good afternoon, everybody, and it's an honor and a privilege to be here and to work with you. I apologize if you may listen to the voice, Lorenzo's voice, my little kid of 3 years old. As Michele said, we are here with the kids, and it's also fun to a certain point. I want to say that the introduction that you made, but also the Cyndy's perspective is absolutely in line with what SDA Bocconi is doing. So basically, we are just going a little bit more quicker in our strategic approach that in a simple way can be defined like from product to service. So the idea now is to sell the experience to our learners in a different way. This means that we have to sell a relationship with the learners, considering that the touch points are different. It's strange that we just opened less than 2 months ago the new campus that at the moment obviously is closed, and we will not obviously we will not know when all the students will may come back and in which conditions. So the experience will be different. We need to have the ability to sell an individualized approach. So the second concept that I want to share after from product to service is the mass customization. So I think we need to be able to sell a top program like the diploma program that we are doing together with Josoor Institute, but giving participants, delegates, and students the possibility to have an individualized approach. So this doesn't mean a completely custom approach, but it's more entering a one-on-one coaching, one-on-one mentoring, one-on-one action plan that technology can absolutely facilitate. So again, technology is an enabler. This is what all the in all the industries they say technology is not an asset, it's an enabler, and we need to use it in order to increase our audience. Final point is in the first part of my answer is that we need to sell not product anymore again, but we need to sell a membership. So the future is that I see the fact that we may sell like yearly or monthly membership for specific needs, and this will help us in creating a base. Think about like a TV and tech platforms. You know, think about Amazon Prime. Think about Sky, ESPN. So they don't sell each product, but they create a huge relationship. So in this perspective, I like to learn from other industries. And as Italian, you mentioned that we are in the middle of the but I like to be positive. I like to learn from our top brands in Italy. Think about Armani. Think about Ferrari. So the idea is they don't sell the product anymore. All the Ferraris in the world, they are all different. The base is the same, the core, the values that they sell are the same, but then they have to sell the experience, creating a high quality relationship.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dino. We will get back to probably to the topic with some specific questions afterwards. Thank you so much. Let me hand it over to Diana to address this general question. If I can use the metaphor of a ship, that everybody's on the same ship to some extent. I look at Minerva as a senior officer on the ship that is relatively okay in the middle of the storm. But I would like Diana to elaborate on that.
Yeah, thank you, Michele. First of all, thanks a lot for having me here today, and greetings to everyone on the call. It's a pleasure to join you. I might speak about Minerva a little bit longer later. I'll keep it general at the moment in terms of what we're saying, sure. But just so that everyone knows, Minerva is a relatively new university. It's around 7 years old. It combines it's all remote learning, but with an in-person physical experience. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. But I wanted to answer your question about what we're seeing. Where are we headed? Yes, yes. What is this jolt, I would say, to the system is doing? So what we see is a few things. One, for sure, academic institutions have been, I would say, pushed into innovation, sometimes even despite their best efforts. We know that academia has not been the first to innovate, but this has been a push into innovation. And we see it at different levels, though. So from a teaching perspective, we're seeing some states using TV and social media and kind of different media to educate their citizens, their students. And this is when you have a strong state led education. You've also seen places where there's public-private partnerships happening. So the government is working with the private sector to deliver education. And sometimes you have just purely institution by institution doing whatever they can. And in terms of I would say innovation, they go from incredibly advanced, so like, you know, in places like Hong Kong or Singapore, where, and by the way, Hong Kong was already prepared for that because they closed their schools back in November because of the social unrest. So this was not the first time they closed schools. And if I want to give an example from the region, same thing in Lebanon. Lebanon closes schools in October. So when I called people in February saying, is teaching happening online? They told me, yes, of course, because it already was happening remotely back in October. So this is a lesson about resilience. And what does it mean for institutions going forward? Because this is not the first or the last time schools will close, unfortunately, whether for political, for climate, for pandemics. So this is a lesson for resilience, I would say. So, and we see those who have done it. So even a country like Lebanon, which is not very maybe technologically advanced, I heard that even in the poorer places, teachers were sending homework on WhatsApp from the first day because they were used to that. So they bounced back relatively fast. So that is what we're seeing in terms of teaching. Now I'm going to talk about learning because that's something different. So whereas a lot of teaching happening, we're less optimistic in what kind of learning is happening. Because even in the most advanced economies and countries, and even in the best institutions, we see a lot of professors and teachers basically doing whatever they were doing in class, now just doing it over Zoom or whatever platform they're using. And that does not translate into learning. In most cases, they were doing a bad job in their beautiful classrooms anyway, because they were lecturing. So for us, and we can talk about this later, that the hardest part of moving your classroom virtually is not the technology. So one of my colleagues just wrote an article saying that the hardest part of an online classroom is not the online part. It's the pedagogy that goes with it. It's the curriculum that goes with it. It's how do you teach? How do you engage? Our brains are not wired to talk like what we're talking to us. Biologically, we want to touch and feel and see. So there's so many distractions. How do you engage students? So there's so much more than just putting on a digital device in a sense. And finally, I would say we see a huge issue with the digital divide. So the digital divide today, education was the equalizer. People sent kids to school so that people from different economic, socioeconomic backgrounds receive the same education. Unfortunately, today, there's a huge inequalizing factor happening because even in rich countries, whether you have a printer at home or you don't, makes a difference. Whether every child has a device or not makes a difference. And if you extrapolate into less advantaged countries where bandwidth is a problem, maybe even access to internet at all is a problem, you're going to see a huge digital divide and exacerbated by availability of parents, because now the parent is the teacher. I'm sure Dino knows that. If he has a 3-year-old, I have 2 kids at home, and I'm like a teacher and a professional at the same time. And even with my best intentions, I am not teaching my kids as best as I can because the teacher does it better. So there will be exacerbations in the system. And my final point, because I think Cynthia mentioned it, which is about people asking for fees back and the cost. And this is a big issue now where a lot of parents are asking, am I going to pay that tuition for an online learning? Which also, I will just put out the question out there, what were they paying tuition for before? Fancy gyms, football fields, nice campuses? Just a question out there.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Diana. Can I just quickly build on your last point, because Dino and I a few days ago had a similar conversation about what is that the end user, the client or the student, call it, in whatever technical term you want, really wants, and what is she going to pay for? That, I guess, is a nice, maybe there is no answer, but there is certainly different parts to an answer. I just wanted, Dino, if you could just jump in and then we go a bit more specifically into the online.
Yeah. Basically, we, as you mentioned at the beginning, and thank you very much, Diana, for also mentioning it. There is a problem of price of this kind of new delivery, because many people are saying reduction of fees. And I said very quickly, listen, the institution is the same, the quality of the institution, the people, the contents and the service obviously are the same. In my case, what I want to say that online, if well done, it's more expensive than face-to-face, because you need to involve other kind of skills, people, roles. And I don't know, Michele, if you want to talk about it now, but we at Bocconi, we are adopting like a TV show approach. So if you wanted to be effective, it's not like, as Diana said, you know, the professor just delivering the same kind of slides and readings material through online technology, but it's a totally different concept. So it's like building a TV show. I was lucky enough at the early stage of my career because I volunteered in a TV media channel, and I had, so basically I had to be part of the team that had to transform a comedy show from the theater to the TV. And basically everybody was focused on making things different. I don't want to take too much of the time of the round table, but just the idea is it's not education, but it's education together with some TV skills, TV show media skills that I think we need to consider.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dino. And maybe just you know, to quickly build on this before we go into the more specific question. Cyndy, you have been following the whole evolution of the education landscape from traditional up to the latest ed tech solutions. Would you have any, maybe as we are still about trends, is there maybe one anecdote or a couple of things that you see that are now, you know, that in your view are really going to make things change? Something really, yeah.
You know, it's interesting, and thank you, Michele, for asking that question. Initially, when we did distance education, and I hate to admit that I was around at this time, you would sign up for a course, send in a paper registration, and they would send you a box in the mail with recorded cassettes and manuals, and you would work through them. And let's say that's 30 years ago. We've gone from 0 to 100. You know, we've gone from Volkswagen to Ferrari in terms of what we can deliver for people, and it's a two-way conversation now. And I think people in my generation who only had experiences with the former kind of distance education, who are now in decision-making capacities in higher education institutions, may not always grasp how far we've come in distance education and not be able to explain well why it's such an outstanding way for people to learn. So I would look to leaders in higher education to educate themselves about what the potential is now, because it's quite interesting. And you know, having said that, I've recently embarked on doing another master's degree myself in educational technology, because there's big gaps in my knowledge now.
Yeah.
And the potential is limitless. So I think looking at that change is very important, and the kind of leadership we get to make sure that leaders keep learning about what the potentials are.
Thank you very much, Cyndy. And I think there is also an opportunity for regions like the MENA region and other parts of the world in which education has been lagging behind for many years, at least in some of them, and have an opportunity to leapfrog now. Okay, let me jump into more specific experiences. So, what has your experience been throughout this still ongoing storm? I think it would be great to hear really, you know, firsthand from you about recent projects in which you have been involved, things you may have had to turn from offline into online overnight, different decisions that had to be made, decisions that maybe were not even conceivable by the organization itself. So it's not just about what decision I'm supposed to make, but you know, what is the kind of decision that has to be made in this kind of circumstances. And I think all of you in different ways have interesting best practices and experiences to share. Cyndy, would you like to start?
Certainly. I think we could have never imagined that we would be here now. And I think I have a very simple message about this, given my experience with Dino and his team and our team. And that's that you can never get away from the value attached to collaboration and cooperation and innovation. And for me, it's about being open-minded and being willing to consider what your partners say. And I think initially when this happened, my first inclination was just, well, let's just cancel the second block. But the more we talked about it, and as the situation evolved, we realized this may go on and we can't just keep canceling things. People need to keep learning. And it wasn't until I spoke with Dino and he very confidently said, look, we can do this. And I remember saying, you can do it by the second block, like that's 3 weeks away. And he said, yeah, we can do that. And because we do have trust, if Dino tells me that it's possible, he's not going to put himself, he would be pretty risk adverse to ruin the reputation of Bocconi. So he's not going to put himself in a position where he can't do that with his faculty, and you need to trust. So I believe that being open-minded and looking for the opportunities rather than focusing on the terror and the negative options are very, very important. And that's what we did. And between the two groups, we were very, very successful, and we can talk more about that later. But
thank you, Cyndy. Dino, would you like to build on that?
Absolutely. I want to compliment the fact that the Bocconi team, this double Bocconi team, couldn't make it without just the Josoor team. So the first answer to the Michele's question is for this kind of delivery, the number of people needed in order to deliver high quality programs is higher than the traditional delivery. Because obviously the two main decisions were which kind of technology. So we used Zoom just for a simple reason. Zoom can show the bigger face of the speaker together with the contents of the other contents. Can be videos, can be PowerPoints, and this is not a technology. The second point is the number of human resources involved. And this comes back to the sustainability of this kind of products. So in the diploma program, I think the trust that we built in the previous 12 months, where the beta currency, sort of currency, a treasure that we used in order to make this quick shift from face-to-face traditional to online. And I want to say thank again to Cyndy, Dr. Cyndy, Michele, because the overall team worked very well. And I think this is really, faculty members being sometimes the only protagonist, then became one of the protagonists because there was a huge team around them.
Thank you, Dino, and we'll get back to your points and Cyndy's points in a few moments. I know that Cyndy also has some nice data. But let me turn to Diana. How is Minerva going about the current situation? And it would be great to hear from you about that.
Sure. So for those who don't know Minerva, I mentioned before, it's Minerva is a different kind of university. It was the founders thought, Ben Nelson, if I were to start a university from scratch, what would it look like? And started with the student. It's like, what are we trying to do? And it was, we're trying to produce knowledge in students who can make the best decisions for the future, for our planet. So that's where we started, and we kind of retro-designed, reverse engineered, if you will. Which means that Minerva is built on a curriculum which is based on learning outcomes, which is different from universities where they learn these skills almost by mistake. So it's about critical thinking, and this is broken down to like 20 different skills for someone to know what critical thinking is. Same for creative thinking, communication, and working together. So that's the curriculum, and it was designed, the pedagogy is designed on the science of learning. So how does a person learn? And again, there are 14 different ways, not ways, but elements for effective learning, from using examples to engagement to file transfer, etc. So it was a very active learning way. And this is where I would not agree with Dino in terms of transferring into a TV presenter, because a TV show is one-to-many, whereas our classes, the professor speaks for less than 10% of the time. It's the students who do the work. So why am I saying that? Because we have our own platform called Forum, which was designed for education. It was designed so that the professor sees all the students, they can technologically not only raise their hands, comment, collaborate on one piece of content, they go on breakouts. We have 7 emojis where, you know, the professor will say, who agreed, how do you feel about this statement? And they can say, agree, disagree, confused, whatever. So it's a platform designed for active learning. So with that said, we were prepared because that's anyway, since 7 years, how our students learn. So their education was not disrupted at all during this phase. What we do have, though, is because our students live together in 6 different cities and they rotate every semester, we obviously had around 600 students far away from home. They were in San Francisco, in Seoul, in Taipei, in Hyderabad, in Buenos Aires. And we told them to go home. We kept our residence open for those who couldn't go home, but we encouraged them to go home and keep learning in their own homes. We have around a quarter still in residences, and we'll keep them because now they can't, most of them cannot go home anymore. So from that perspective, their education was not disrupted. So what we did, though, is we said to ourselves, we've been doing this for 7 years, maybe we should help others. And we've done a series of things. We had webinars, Ask Me Anything, kind of office hours, all online for free, for any professor in the world can kind of call, and we can help them platform agnostic without using our platform, help them with kind of active learning, the science of learning, how they can transform their classroom into a virtual classroom. So we've done that, and then we obviously work with many universities and even high schools and partner with them. Many of them use our curriculum and pedagogy and platform for their own institutions. So we're doing more of that. As you can imagine, there's more interest in that. And then we've done a couple of things now, as I think Cyndy mentioned. For international students next year, there's a big question. And that is basically what will happen to them, especially if borders close, visas are not issued, or if visas are not issued, et cetera, et cetera. So we're launching something called International Scholars, so that any student who's accepted in a few universities can continue learning at home for their first year using our curriculum, and then they can transfer their credits later, so that they don't have to miss a year, they don't have to kind of miss a semester or a year, or miss out on learning. So these are a couple of things we're doing.
Thank you very much, Jana. May I get back to Cyndy and Dino in terms of sharing some data and takeaways from the recent collaboration, which in a way is a best practice. And I know that Cyndy, do you copy us well now? Is your connection okay?
Yeah.
Good.
I just apologize if you lose me because
no problem. We will let you know. It would be great maybe to if you would be able to share some of the data takeaways from because that's a user perspective. It's very important.
So both STA Bocconi and ourselves are very committed to continuous improvement and reflecting on what we do to continuously improve every delivery. So traditionally after every block, we do a very in-depth delegate survey to see how their experience was. This time we focused our survey on their experience learning online and the whole experience in terms of communication, getting there, how they interacted with the technology, what their level of engagement was like, because we want to make sure. We anticipated that we may be doing this for a couple of more blocks and we wanted to continue to do it well. So we, right after the first block, we sent a survey to them, and we had like over 60% response rate to that out of the 88 people that participated in the program. And Of those people, half of them had studied online before. Half of them, like half of that class, had never studied online. Please keep in mind these are mid-level professional people generally with several years of work experience, and they all already hold baccalaureate degrees. So they've been through an undergraduate education. Of the ones that had completed an education or some kind of educational activity online, 56% of them said what Bocconi delivered for them with our support was better than what they'd done in a pre-packaged online education program, which to me was outstanding because this particular learning activity had never been designed to be delivered online. So it took a lot of work to get it to a point where it would be like that. When we asked delegates about their engagement, 81% of them said they were engaged or very engaged in their learning. And I think it's all right just to say I'm engaged, but we asked them what kind of tools they used to feel engaged in the classes. And 90% of them said they wrote questions in the comment boxes. They responded by using thumbs up, click, or a thumbs down. They used the audio feature to speak with professor and other delegates. They worked in breakout rooms on projects. This is very important because it simulates what they would do in the actual live classroom. And they shared documents and presentations online, and they participated in poll everywhere activities where they actually go on their phone and respond to a poll that the faculty member issues. So it's very interesting in that not only can they engage that way, we can monitor their engagement to see who really is engaged. Where in the regular classroom, you don't know. Someone could just be sitting there staring at the PowerPoint and not really engaged. They could be on their phone. So the tools that we have are really good to assess if our learners are engaged. I won't go through all the results because there's quite a few, but the important ones are that we asked them if they thought that the Josoor team provided timely communications about what was going to happen. Because if you think back to like beginning of February, the virus was starting to appear and people were wondering, is this going to affect us and what's going to happen? Is our block going to be canceled? And so as soon as we could, we communicated with delegates, and that was very early in March, just to tell them, look, we've got a plan, hold tight, you're going to get instructions soon. So 95% of our delegates felt like they were well supported and they were happy with the responses that they got, with the information they got, the tools they got, the documentation, and that it all went very well. One of the other things we need to mention is not only did we have to take this from a face-to-face delivery to an online format, we had to provide translation because out of our 88 students, 23 of them opted to have simultaneous Arabic translation. So in the regular classroom, we have translators for every session. And we had to figure out how to do that online. And thankfully, the Zoom technology in their business license has the capacity to do that, where our interpreters, our translation people would just get on and people could switch channels and they could listen to the whole class in the language that they were comfortable listening in. And I think 75% of the delegates were very satisfied with that. It's an area that we'll keep working with. Another area that was interesting was with our, we asked our delegates, was your employer supportive of you participating in this training activity during the crisis and while you're working at home? Because we weren't sure whether or not employers would release their people to do this kind of training. They're out of the workplace for the entire week. And 85% of them said yes, they were completely supportive of this. So from an employer perspective, it makes me very pleased to see that the people sending their employees to this type of training and education are very supportive of those learning activities. And overall, I just want to say that the experience, when we asked them about their experience overall, 100% of them said they were satisfied with the experience that they got in the first block. So that doesn't mean we're not going to keep trying and making it better, but it was important to get that feedback.
Thank you, Cyndy. May I, Dino, as I move to you, can I challenge you somehow, because I've been reading the questions that have been coming in through the chat. Where is the, in the current circumstances, and you can use the example of our collaboration, but you can think also more broadly. Where is the field experience going to go?
I think the goal now is to understand the sustainability of this kind of project. So I like a lot the data presented by Cyndy, but also the examples made by Diana. And I totally agree that the TV is only a metaphor, because we strongly believe that the presenter, like in any TV show, just talks a little bit, but he or she has to involve many other sources of information. We were inspired by this, also a colleague of mine, Deborah, mentioned, Benjamin Franklin saying, if you, the sentence is, tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. And it's interesting, like Diana and Cyndy said, that satisfaction goes with engagement. So engagement means that, like Diana said, 90% of the contents must be provided by other people rather than the faculty members. So we become, as a faculty members, orchestrator of a process, and this is absolutely our new skills that we need to learn. I was, I wanted to make, that I'm a slave to simplicity. I like to be concrete. And I wanted to use the metaphor of media shows just to say, where we can be inspired. So coming back to where the question is, we need to incorporate new skills in our team. We need to learn from others. We need to think out of the box. And coming back to the diploma program, so we already put in place a continuous learning process, saying, okay, we will deliver block 3 in mid-June. We will do something different, something new compared to block 2, because we need to create interest. We need to engage participants, exactly like media. Each program is slightly different because we want to create curiosity. So the field has to create partnerships. I would like to have a media, media lights, media in my business school. That's exactly what we are having as the Bocconi School of Management in the new campus. But I think this should be more and more.
Thank you very much, Dino. We still have a little bit over 10 minutes. I'm going through the questions. The last question I got is a very interesting one and also complex. So I think I would like the three of you maybe to react with keywords or with maybe open questions as opposed to trying to attempt an answer. So the question is, how about the accreditation and acceptance of complete online programs on a wide scale by government, Ministry of Education, for example? This is a highly complex, highly complicated, legal, political, there are so many implications, and somehow one can talk about the world of education through by means of a discussion about accreditation, because that's it's one of the things to which a lot of the other things boil down to. But if you could offer like a snippet, a mini perspective on what you are, what keeps you awake at night as you think about accreditation. Diana, would you like to start?
Sure. As you said, it is a very complex issue. However, I'm also happy to say, although complex, it is a doable issue. And this is what Minerva is doing, almost done. So the way we've done it is we kind of incubated our program as part of KGI, which was an existing consortium of colleges, which was already accredited. And now we're spinning out to get our own accreditation. And we will have it in around 8 to 12 months, where we're almost there. And it's become in the US a model where people say, if you want to get accreditation, do it the Minerva way, which is kind of incubate yourself in an existing institution and then spin out. And we're, as I said before, we're 100% online and will be fully accredited. So it's doable. It's complex though.
Thank you very much, Diana. Cyndy, what would you like to share of your many reflections?
I will just briefly offer that for many years in the state of Qatar, online learning was not accepted and not recognized, because I think early on they had many negative experiences. So one thing we have to keep in mind is there's diploma mills face-to-face and there's diploma mills online. There's good educational institutions and bad ones. The method of the delivery isn't important, and the state of Qatar has made a big improvement and they've come a long way. Right now, if you go onto the Ministry of Ed and Higher Ed website, you'll find that there's 155 post-secondary institutions that are approved to deliver credentials online for the state of Qatar. Most of them were institutions that were already approved to do face-to-face delivery, where the ministry would support people for scholarships, Qatari students for scholarships. So if you go on to that list, you'll see they're all well-established institutions that would have their own accreditation on their face-to-face programs, then that they did go ahead and get extended to their online offerings as well. So Qatar has turned that corner, and I think more and more we'll see people in the country using that kind of resource for learning.
Thank you very much, Cyndy. And maybe an open question that remains once the complex topic of accreditation is sorted out is how you make sure that the quality of what is offered and accredited remains high, which I think depends on a number of other factors. Dino, would you have any comment about accreditation? Also, maybe discussions that are taking place at Bocconi right now. I believe this is really bread and butter these days.
Yeah, exactly. I think here the title that I want to share with you is how we test the knowledge that learners were able to learn. I think I want to say also a big thank to the teams, the Bocconi team, because what I'm saying is a little bit the summary of what I'm also learning thanks to the working together with Antonio, Deborah, the two Lucas, Nicola, Simone as well, Joe. So they are all I want to say thank. The idea is that it's much important the partnership with employers. So if I know where the delegate is, in this moment I don't have to do a multiple choice question, an individual assignments, also testing knowledge in an innovative way. So the key word here is that we need to be able to partner with employers in order to understand how we can make impact, how we can measure the impact. So if I have in mind a delegate, the diploma program of working for SC, and I know the kind of job that he or she is doing, I think we can, the test of knowledge for me is the innovation that that person is able to bring at SC. So I don't have to think about a theories definition. This is just those are, it's a good ingredients, but the ultimate goal is the impact on the daily working life.
Thank you, Dino. Okay, I was looking at other questions from the audience. Somebody would like to join Josoor. We will stay in touch with him later. So we still have 5 minutes. What I would like to ask you is along the lines of somehow of how we approached the accreditation question is, from your perspective, considering the current situation, but also looking at the long-term strategy of your respective organization, what is important for you that that we as the audience, as the users, should keep in mind as a guiding question? So for you as a practitioner in the industry, what would help us as an audience understand one challenge, one opportunities you are facing right now in the form of a question? Diana, would you like to?
Yeah, for us, as I said before, this has not shocked our system. However, if I think back of why we exist, it's about transforming education to produce better decision makers. And us alone, we cannot have that impact. We're a small university. We have around 600 students. Very selective, admission is less than 2%, but alone, that's not impact. So what we need is we need to partner with other existing universities who are with us on this journey to transform education, not just digitally, that's one piece, but yes, to really think about the student outcome, the learning, and I think both Cyndy and Dino touched on very important issues. How do we assess learning? And digital is a great tool to assess learning because you have everything recorded, everything documented to a certain extent. So we would love other universities to think differently about education, to partner us with this journey. We've had very good outcomes, and that's what I would like to leave you with to a certain extent, that this is about transformation. We needed to put the bandage in the spring because it came as a shock to everyone, but this is an opportunity to transform the DNA of education.
Thank you very much, Diana. Cyndy, what is the open question for you, the open opportunity?
So I guess my question would be to organizational leaders who have businesses or organizations in the sports or events sector, and that's what are the skills, knowledge, and abilities that you need to see in your employees of the future that will help us build their capacity to help diversify the economy of Qatar? Because really, we have two goals. The first one is help to deliver an amazing World Cup in 2022. And the second one is to help build capacity within the workforce so that there's more autonomy in delivering sports, events, sports, and all kinds of activities in the state of Qatar post 2022.
Thank you, Cyndy. Thank you very much. Dino, what is your takeaway question that you share with us?
Yeah, the opportunity that I see is that we need to think about the relevance of trust, building trust among leaders, both at the corporate level, business level, governmental level. Education is just an enabler. So the building trust, we build the bridges, and I know Josoor means a bridge. So I think the technology needs to build the bridges with the key cities, key institutions. So the big question is, how can we build more and more trust? So I would like to invest not on technology, but is just a counterintuitive. I would invest more on leadership skills of educators, because technology is more than enough. So the features are there. I think we need to invest on the approach that learners, educators need to have in order to create that good climate. And then, in this moment, I miss Qatar. You know that for Bocconi, Qatar is not just a place where we deliver, but is a place where we learn and where we want to invest. So in this moment, I think technology is giving us another opportunity to create one big bridge between Milan and Doha, and inshallah also other bridges all around the world.
Thank you, Dino. Okay, so we still have one or 2 minutes. I would like to close the session by sharing a couple of questions that just came in without we don't have time to answer those, but I would like to highlight them for the audience. One question is where education will take the student from the country like India and Nepal, where a student migrates to countries like Europe, US, and Australia, where they work, earn, and pay for their tuition. How online class will help the student, like we help students like these? This is one question. Another question, Rajiv asks, thank you for sending the invite to join the Future of Education. I would like to know what is most important thing required to make online education as close to physical education. I think a part of, certainly we discussed a number of topics which can help address this kind of question. And then to conclude, I was trying to take, as I was moderating, I was trying to take some notes on a slide. I'd like to share the screen. Can you see the slide? Yes. Great. So these are just a few takeaways. By no means I want to cover everything, but some of the takeaways. Resilience is key through the crisis. Goes back to a point Diana raised about crisis beyond health crisis. Hybrid seems to be increasingly the norm. Online participation is good. Focus is not just on product, but also on service. The one-to-one approach is key and is an opportunity. How we learn, there is still a lot to discover. Those with the best practices will probably thrive in the future. Accreditation is a complex but doable thing. Partnership for stronger impact is very important. Some of you mentioned that on a number of comments. The digital divide remains. And maybe the general question for all of us as we live is, will this crisis help address the skills gap? I would like to thank everyone for having joined this session. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Dino. Thank you, Cyndy. Thank you very much, Shahid, for your technical support throughout. And thanks to SC, Q22 colleagues and friends and kids who joined this session. Also, happy birthday to Alex, Diana's son, who is turning 6 today. And we hope to see you all in the next Josoor session. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.